The city was loud, fast, and unforgiving for a young woman named Elena Carter. It felt like it never slowed down long enough for her to catch her breath. Every morning started with hope, and every night ended with disappointment. She had arrived in this city believing hard work would be enough. But reality had been far colder than she expected. Today was supposed to be different. Clutching a worn-out folder containing her resume, Elena stood in front of a massive iron gate. Beyond it stood a mansion unlike anything she had ever seen: tall glass windows, marble pillars, and a garden that looked like it belonged in a magazine rather than real life. This was her last option. Housekeeping job had been advertised here: simple work, stable pay, and a chance to finally stop living in cheap rented rooms and temporary shelters. She had told herself this would be just another interview. Nothing more, nothing less, but something about the place felt intimidating. The gates opened automatically as if they already knew she was expected. A chauffeur guided her up the long driveway, and every step made her feel smaller in a world that seemed too big for her. When she entered the mansion, she was greeted by silence, not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, expensive kind. The kind of silence that came from power. And then she saw him. At the far end of the hall stood a man in a dark, tailored suit. He wasn't smiling, he wasn't welcoming. He was simply observing her like she was a puzzle he had already started solving. This was Adrian Cole, a self-made businessman known for his ruthless decisions and emotional distance. People said he built empires but never relationships. Some even said he didn't trust anyone anymore. Elena straightened her posture. "Good morning. I'm here for the housekeeping position." Her voice was steady, but inside she felt nervous. Adrian didn't respond immediately. He walked slowly around her, not in a rude way, but in a way that felt deeply unsettling, like he was evaluating something far beyond her resume. Finally, he stopped. "I don't need a cook," he said calmly. Elena blinked. "Excuse me?" His eyes stayed fixed on her. "I don't need someone to clean my house." A pause stretched between them. Elena's confusion turned into frustration. "Then why did you call me here?" That's when everything changed. Adrian's expression didn't soften. Instead, it grew more serious, almost calculating. "I need a wife," he said. The words hit her like a sudden shock. For a moment, Elena thought she had misheard him. Wife," she repeated slowly. "Yes," he replied. "Not emotionally. Not traditionally. It's a practical arrangement." Elena stared at him in disbelief. "I think you've misunderstood something. I applied for a job, not this." She took a step back, ready to leave, but Adrian raised his hand slightly, not to stop her physically, but to hold her attention. "You're not the first to be confused," he said. "Let me explain." His voice remained calm, controlled-like. He was presenting a business deal rather than something involving human emotion. "My family expects stability. My company board expects an image. I need a wife in name only. No emotions involved, no complications." Elena's heart pounded. "That's not how marriage works. For most people," he admitted. "For me, it's different." Silence fell again. Elena looked around the luxurious hall, the chandeliers, the polished floors, the distant portraits of people who looked nothing like her. And then she looked back at him, a man who had everything, except warmth in his voice still. His offer felt absurd, almost insulting. "I'm sorry," she said firmly, "but I'm not desperate enough to sell my life like that." She turned toward the door. For a second, she thought it would end there. But Adrian's next words made her stop. "You won't find another job this week," he said quietly. Elena froze. Not because she believed him completely, but because something in his tone suggested he might be right. The city had already proven how easily it could shut doors on her. She didn't turn back immediately. But she didn't leave either, and in that uncertain silence, something strange began. A decision she had not planned for was slowly starting to form. Behind her, Adrian stood still, watching her like she was the first unpredictable thing to enter his perfectly controlled world. And neither of them knew it yet. But this moment was the beginning of everything that would change both their lives forever. Elena didn't sleep that night. The words kept repeating in her mind like a broken record. "I need a wife." It sounded unreal, like something from a movie she would never choose to watch. And yet, it had happened in real life in a marble hall, under the cold gaze of a man who treated emotions like business transactions. By morning, she told herself she would forget it, she would walk away, find another job, survive like she always had, but life had other plans. The next day, Elena returned to the mansion not because she accepted anything, but because she needed clarity. She wanted to reject the offer properly, face to face, without confusion lingering in her mind. The gates opened again. This time, it felt less like entering a palace and more like stepping into a trap she didn't fully understand. Adrian Cole was waiting in the same hall as always. He looked composed, dark suit, calm expression, unreadable eyes. He didn't seem surprised to see her. In fact, it felt like he expected her return. "You came back?" He said simply, "I came to say no." Elena replied immediately. A faint pause. Then Adrian nodded once, as if accepting data rather than rejection. Fair, that reaction confused her more than anything else. Most people would argue, persuade, get angry, but not him. Instead, he walked toward a small sitting area beside the grand staircase and gestured for her to sit. "I want you to understand the arrangement properly," he said. Elena crossed her arms. "There's nothing to understand. I'm not marrying someone for convenience." "It's not marriage in the emotional sense," he replied calmly. "It's a contract." That word again, contract. Elena let out a frustrated breath. "You keep saying that like it makes it normal." "For me, it is," he said. She studied him carefully now. There was something deeply controlled about him. Not just rich or powerful, but emotionally sealed, like a door that hadn't been opened in years. "Why me?" she asked suddenly. That question made him pause for the first time. His eyes shifted slightly, as if evaluating something beyond her appearance. "You are not connected to my world," he said. "No social ties, no expectations. No history with my family or business rivals." Elena frowned. "So I'm convenient. I prefer to say practical." That word again hit her like a quiet insult. She stood up. "You're not looking for a wife. You're looking for an accessory." Adrian didn't deny it. Instead, he said something worse. "I'm looking for stability." Elena laughed bitterly. "And you think a stranger pretending to be your wife will give you that?" He looked at her steadily. "Yes." Silence stretched between them again. For a moment, Elena felt anger rise in her chest, but underneath it, something else lingered. Curiosity, confusion, maybe even pity, because despite everything he had, Adrian Cole didn't look like a man who had peace. He looked like someone who had built walls so high, even he couldn't climb them anymore. Still, she shook her head. "I don't care how rich you are or what problems you think you have," she said firmly. "I won't live inside someone else's arrangement." She turned again toward the exit, but this time, Adrian spoke faster. "There are conditions," he said. She stopped, but didn't turn. "You would live here," he continued. "No financial worries, no job searching, complete safety. Everything you need." Elena slowly turned back. "And in return?" she asked. Adrian's expression didn't change. "Appear as my wife in public events. Nothing more." The simplicity of it made it sound even stranger, a life of luxury. For pretending, Elena shook her head again. "This is insane." "Perhaps," he admitted. That honesty unsettled her more than anything else. Most powerful men disguised their intentions. But Adrian didn't pretend. He didn't sugarcoat. He simply stated things as they were, even if they were disturbing. Elena walked closer, her voice lower now. "Why are you so desperate for this image?" For a brief second, something flickered in his eyes. Something sharp. Something almost human, but it disappeared just as quickly. "That is not your concern," he said, a boundary. Cold and final. Elena felt a strange frustration building inside her. Not just at the offer, but at him. At the way he kept everything locked away behind walls of control. She exhaled slowly. "I won't do it," she said for the final time. This time, she meant it completely. She walked toward the exit without waiting for his response, but just as she reached the door, Adrian's voice followed her, quiet, controlled, but carrying weight. "You will reconsider?" he said. Elena paused slightly, not because she agreed, but because something in his tone suggested he believed the world would force her back, and as she stepped outside into the bright, uncertain city air, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just taken a turn she hadn't agreed to, one that wasn't finished with her yet. Elena thought she had escaped the strange offer. She told herself that the mansion, the man, and the absurd proposal were behind her now, just another unsettling memory in a city already full of struggles, but reality didn't let her move on so easily. 2 days later, her situation collapsed in a way she didn't expect. The small rental room she was staying in gave her an ultimatum: pay the overdue rent within 24 hours or leave immediately. Her part-time cafe job had reduced her shifts without warning, and every other place she applied to either ignored her or said the same thing: no openings right now. It felt like the city had quietly closed its doors on her. Standing on the sidewalk with her bag beside her, Elena felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time: helplessness. That evening, she found herself walking again toward the only place that still felt unreal: the mansion. She hated that she was going back, hated even more that she didn't have another option when the gates opened. It didn't feel like invitation anymore. It felt like surrender. Adrian Cole was not surprised. He stood near the same hall as before, as if time inside his world didn't move the same way it did outside. You came back, he said calmly. Elena tightened her grip on her bag. Not for your offer. He watched her carefully. Then why are you here? A pause. Her pride fought with her reality. I need a place to stay temporarily, she admitted reluctantly. Until I figure things out? Adrian nodded once. Number. Judgment. No emotion. You may stay, he said. Just like that. No questions. No conditions explained. No negotiation. That simplicity unsettled her more than rejection would have. Elena expected chaos inside a billionaire's home. Instead, she found silence. Not peace, but emptiness. The mansion was spotless, but cold. Servants moved like shadows, speaking only when necessary. Meals were served on time, eaten quietly, and cleared away without conversation. Everything was efficient. Everything was controlled, but nothing felt alive. On her first night, Elena stood in the grand kitchen alone, looking at the perfectly arranged space. It was beautiful, but lifeless. You don't talk much here, do you? She said to one of the staff. The woman hesitated. We speak when spoken to, ma'am. The word ma'am made Elena uncomfortable. She wasn't used to being addressed like someone important. Later that night, she saw Adrian again in the library. He was sitting alone under a dim lamp, reading documents stacked neatly in front of him. He looked exactly like the image people would imagine: powerful, distant, untouchable, but also exhausted in a way no one talked about. You live like this all the time? Elena asked. He didn't look up. Yes, doesn't it get lonely? That made him pause, a rare pause. Then he said, loneliness is efficient. Elena frowned. That doesn't make sense. He finally looked at her. It doesn't have to. There it was again, that emotional distance. Like he had trained himself to disconnect from anything that didn't serve a purpose. Elena leaned against the bookshelf. You built a perfect prison for yourself. A faint flicker crossed his expression. I built control. Same thing, she replied. Silence followed. But something had shifted slightly, not in the room, but in the way they looked at each other over the next few days. Elena began to see both worlds more clearly. There was her world, the struggling, unpredictable life outside these walls. A world where people laughed loudly, argued openly, and survived through chaos. And then there was his world, quiet, polished, and emotionally frozen. A world where everything functioned, but nothing connected. Strangely, she started noticing small things. Adrian never ate with anyone. He never smiled. He never asked personal questions, but he always noticed details. If she skipped a meal, food would quietly appear in her room later. If she stayed up late in the library, someone would bring her tea without her asking. If she looked stressed, he would subtly adjust meetings so she wouldn't be disturbed. It wasn't kindness in a warm sense. It was observation, care without expression. One evening, Elena found him standing by the mansion's large glass windows, looking out at the city lights. You ever go outside just to exist? She asked. he replied without turning. I go outside for purpose. She shook her head. That sounds exhausting. For a moment he didn't respond. Then quietly, almost too quietly to hear, he said, It is. And that was the first time. Elena realized something unexpected. The man who claimed he needed a wife wasn't just looking for a role, he was living like someone who had forgotten how to feel human, and somehow her presence in his world was starting to disturb that silence. The mansion looked the same on the outside, perfect, controlled, untouchable, but for Elena, something had started to change inside it. It wasn't the building, it was the man who lived in it. Adrian Cole remained as distant as ever, yet now she noticed something she hadn't seen before. The weight behind his silence, not arrogance, not superiority. Something heavier, like he was constantly carrying a past he refused to put down. One afternoon, Elena was organizing books in the library when she accidentally knocked over a thick file from a side table. Pages scattered across the floor. She quickly bent down to pick them up, but stopped when she saw what they were: financial reports, legal documents, press clippings, and one headline that stood out: Cole Empire rises after family scandal and trust breakdown. Elena hesitated. She knew she shouldn't look deeper, but curiosity won. Later that evening she confronted him. He was in the study, standing near a large desk covered in neatly arranged documents. As always, he didn't look surprised to see her. You've been reading things about me, he said before she even spoke. Elena didn't deny it. I didn't mean to. It fell. He turned slightly, his expression unreadable, and that single word felt like an invitation and a warning. Elena stepped forward. And I don't understand something. Silence. She continued carefully. You don't just want a wife for appearances. There's something else. Adrian closed the file in front of him slowly. That is not relevant. It is to me, she said firmly. Because I'm the one you're asking to be part of it. For the first time, something in his expression tightened, not anger, but resistance. He walked past her toward the window. Outside, the city glowed. In the distance, my family, he said finally, believed emotion makes people weak. Elena listened quietly. My father built his life on control. My mother built hers on silence. And when everything collapsed? He paused briefly. I learned not to repeat their mistakes. Elena frowned. Avoiding emotion isn't strength, it's fear. A sharp silence followed. This time he turned to face her fully. You think I fear emotion? He asked. His voice was calm but sharper than before. Elena didn't step back. I think you stopped trusting it. That landed differently. For a second, Adrian said nothing. Then, unexpectedly, he walked back to his desk and picked up a framed photograph. He didn't hand it to her, but he didn't hide it either. That was an older image, faded slightly. A younger Adrian stood beside two people, a man and a woman who looked like his parents, but their smiles didn't reach their eyes. There was a time, he said quietly, when I believed success could fix everything. Elena watched him carefully. What happened? She asked softly. A long pause, then almost reluctantly he said, Everything broke anyway. The simplicity of it carried more weight than explanation. Elena didn't push further. For once, she understood that some pain didn't need interrogation, it needed space. Over the following days, she noticed more cracks in his perfect world. Adrian didn't sleep well. She saw him in the early hours of morning. Still working, he rarely left his study unless necessary, and when he did speak about his company, there was no pride, only responsibility. Like he wasn't building something he loved, but maintaining something that would fall apart without him. One evening, she found him staring at a contract draft for the marriage arrangement. It lay on the table between them like an uncomfortable truth neither of them had fully addressed. You still want this? She asked quietly. He didn't look up immediately. I need it, he corrected. Elena crossed her arms. You keep saying need like it's the same as want. That made him pause for a brief moment. The mask slipped slightly. I don't have the luxury of wanting things, he said. Elena softened her voice. Everyone does. He finally looked at her. And for a second, something unspoken passed between them, something fragile, almost human. I built my life so nothing could hurt me again, He admitted. The words hung in the air. Elena stepped closer, not aggressively, but gently. And did it work? She asked. Silence. That silence answered everything that night. Elena couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the man behind all the control, the one who didn't know how to ask for help, only how to build walls. And for the first time, she didn't see him as just a billionaire making an absurd offer. She saw him as someone who had survived too much and forgotten how to live after it. But what neither of them realized yet was this: the more she understood his pain, the more dangerous their connection was becoming. Something in the mansion began to shift, not loudly, not suddenly, but in small, almost invisible moments that neither Elena nor Adrian could fully ignore anymore. The silence was still there, but it no longer felt empty. It felt shared. Elena had started settling into a strange routine. She helped the staff sometimes, not because she was asked, but because doing nothing in a place like this made her feel more like a guest than a person. She didn't belong to this world, and she knew it, but Adrian never treated her like a guest, and that confused her more than anything. One evening, a sudden power issue caused part of the mansion's lighting system to shut down. The backup generators kicked in, but the atmosphere changed, instantly less polished, more human. Elena found herself in the kitchen, making tea by hand instead of using the automated system. She didn't notice Adrian standing at the doorway until she spoke. "You do realize this place has machines for everything, right?" He stepped inside slowly. "I'm aware." She glanced at him. "Then why use none of it properly?" He paused. "Because machines don't adjust." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Neither do you." For a moment, something like a faint, almost smile touched his expression, but it disappeared quickly. That night, they ended up in the same room again, the library. It became an unspoken meeting place, even though neither of them admitted it. Elena sat on the couch reading. Adrian worked at the desk. No formal conversation. No intention. Just presence. Minutes passed, then hours. At some point, Elena broke the silence. "Do you ever do something just because you like it?" Adrian didn't look up. "Everything I do has purpose." "That's not an answer," she said. He finally glanced at her. "It is for me." She closed her book. "That sounds miserable." He didn't respond immediately, then quietly, "It's efficient." Elena sighed. "You're not a system, Adrian. You're a person." That made him stop writing. A long silence followed. The next day brought something unexpected. A business event required Adrian to attend a formal gathering. Press, investors, high-profile guests. And for the first time he asked something unusual. "Elena," he said as she walked past the hallway, "come with me tonight." She stopped. "Why?" she asked immediately. His answer was simple. "You're staying here. It will be easier if you're seen." Elena folded her arms. "So I'm part of the image now." A pause. "Yes," he said. That honesty should have bothered her more than it did, but instead something else stirred inside her, frustration, mixed with curiosity. "Fine," she said reluctantly, "but I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not." "I wouldn't expect you to," he replied. That was new. He didn't try to control her reaction. He didn't instruct her. He simply accepted it, and that unsettled her in a different way. At the event, everything was polished and loud. Bright lights, sharp suits, forced smiles. Elena felt like she had stepped into another world entirely, but Adrian moved through it effortlessly, calm, composed, untouchable, until people noticed her. Whispers started almost immediately. "Who is she? That must be new. Is she his?" Elena felt the weight of attention. But Adrian did something subtle. He stayed close. Not possessive, protectively. When someone tried to pull him into a long conversation, he briefly shifted his position so Elena was not left alone in the crowd. It was small, but she noticed, later, during a quiet moment on a balcony away from the noise. Elena finally spoke. "You handle people like they're pieces on a board," she said. Adrian stood beside her, looking out at the city lights. "That's what business is." She shook her head. "No, that's what loneliness teaches you to do." He didn't respond immediately. The night breeze moved between them. Then, unexpectedly, he said, "You notice too much." Elena turned slightly toward him. And you noticed, too. Little about yourself? That landed between them like a soft impact. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Adrian said something quieter than before. Being close to people creates risk. Elena looked at him. So you avoid it? I manage it, he corrected. She gave a small, knowing smile. That's another word for avoiding. A faint tension lingered. Not anger, something more complicated. When they returned to the mansion, the atmosphere felt different again, not uncomfortable, but charged, like something had been acknowledged without being spoken out loud. Before heading to her room, Elena paused at the staircase. Adrian, she said. He stopped. She hesitated for a moment, then said softly, You don't have to live like everything is a strategy. For a second he didn't answer, then quietly, And you don't have to stay here. That was the first time he didn't respond like a businessman. It sounded like something else, something dangerously close to concern. Elena went upstairs, heart slightly unsettled, not because of fear, but because she could no longer tell where. The arrangement ended and something real was beginning, and somewhere in the quiet mansion below, Adrian stood still longer than usual. As if realizing the same thing, the mansion had learned a new kind of silence. Not the cold silence it used to carry, but the heavy silence that comes after something unspoken has started to matter. Elena felt it every time she walked through the halls now, and so did Adrian. Neither of them said it, but both of them knew something was changing. It began with a misunderstanding, a simple moment, the kind that doesn't look important until it destroys everything around it. That morning, Elena found a document left open on Adrian's desk. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't private in the way secrets usually are, but it was enough to make her stop. A revised version of the marriage arrangement contract. Her name was typed clearly on the top, but the language inside felt colder than before. The role of the spouse will remain strictly representational. No emotional obligations are implied or expected. Termination of arrangement may occur at any time by either party. Elena read it once, then again. Something inside her tightened, because even though she already knew it was a contract, seeing it written so clearly made it feel real in a way she wasn't prepared for. When Adrian entered the room, he immediately noticed her expression. You saw it, he said calmly. Elena didn't look up. Was I supposed to find out I'm just an arrangement like this? His tone stayed steady. It's clarity, she let out a bitter laugh. Clarity? You reduce people to terms and call it clarity? He stepped closer. That is not what I meant, but Elena shook her head. No, I get it now, she said quietly. I'm not here because you trust me. I'm not here because you care. She looked at him directly. I'm here because I fit your system. That sentence landed hard. For the first time, Adrian's expression changed, not dramatically, but noticeably. Something tightened in his jaw. That is not accurate, he said. Elena stepped back slightly. Then what is? Silence. He didn't answer immediately, and that silence was the problem. Because silence, in Adrian's world, meant control, but in Elena's world, silence meant absence, and absence meant rejection. You never actually see me, she said, her voice shaking slightly now. You see usefulness, you see convenience. You see everything except a person? Adrian's eyes darkened slightly. That is not true. But she didn't stop. I left everything behind for this city, she continued. I had nothing when I came here. And when I finally thought I found stability, it turns out I'm just part of another transaction. Her voice cracked, but she refused to stop. I won't be your contract, Adrian. That word hit differently. This time, contract, not arrangement. Not agreement, contract. Something between them shifted instantly. Adrian took a step forward. Elena! But she stepped back immediately. Don't, she said sharply. The distance between them felt wider than the room itself. You think you're protecting yourself? She continued. But all you're doing is making sure no one ever gets close enough to matter. His voice lowered. That is not protection. It is necessary. For who? She asked. That question hung there. And for the first time, Adrian didn't have an immediate answer. The silence stretched, longer than before. He looked at her differently now, like a business decision, but like something slipping out of his control. And that seemed to unsettle him more than anything else. "I never misled you," he said finally. Elena shook her head slowly. "You didn't need to. You just never let me believe I was anything more." A pause. Then softly she added, "And I did." That was the breaking point, not anger, not shouting. Just truth. Elena picked up her bag from the chair. Adrian's voice tightened slightly. "Where are you going?" She looked at him one last time. "Anywhere I'm not a contract." And then she walked out. No dramatic exit. No resistance from the staff. No attempt to stop her. Just footsteps echoing through a mansion that suddenly felt even colder than before. Adrian stood still, long after she was gone. The contract lay on his desk, untouched. But for the first time, it didn't feel like control. It felt like loss. Something unfamiliar pressed against his chest, quiet, unwanted, and impossible to ignore. And in that moment, the man who had built his entire life around never needing anyone realized something he had never prepared for. She wasn't just leaving his house. She was leaving the part of his life that had finally started to feel alive. The mansion felt different the moment Elena left. Not because anything had changed physically, but because something essential was missing. Adrian noticed it immediately. The silence was no longer normal. The halls no longer felt controlled. Even the light from the tall windows seemed colder, as if the house itself had lost something it couldn't replace. For the first time in years, everything he built felt incomplete. At first, he told himself it was temporary. She would calm down, she would return. People always returned when reality became difficult enough. That was his logic. That was his system. But hours passed. Then a full day, then another, and Elena did not come back. Adrian tried to continue his routine. Meetings, calls, reports, everything he normally used to keep his mind sharp. But nothing worked. Every document looked the same. Every conversation felt distant. Every decision felt heavier than before. Because now there was a thought he couldn't ignore. She is gone. And unlike business losses, this one had no recovery plan. On the third night, he found himself standing in the library, the same place where they had shared countless silent hours. Her favorite book was still on the couch, left open, as if she might return at any moment and continue reading from where she stopped. Adrian picked it up slowly. For a moment, he just stared at it. Then something unexpected happened. A memory surfaced, her voice, her questions, her frustration. Her laughter small, rare, but real. And suddenly the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt loud. He sat down. For the first time in a long time, he didn't open a laptop or a file. He just sat there thinking, and thinking led to something he had avoided his entire life. Reflection. He started replaying everything. The first meeting, the contract, her confusion, her resistance, her anger. And slowly something uncomfortable became clear. He hadn't truly been looking for a wife. He had been looking for control over uncertainty, over judgment, over vulnerability, over the possibility of being seen as human. And Elena, without even trying, had challenged all of it. She didn't fear him. She questioned him. She didn't accept his world. She entered it and changed it. And that was something he had never experienced before. For the first time, Adrian understood something uncomfortable. She wasn't part of his arrangement. She was the only part of his life that wasn't an arrangement. He stood up suddenly, as if the realization itself was too heavy to sit with. Walking through the mansion, he noticed things he had ignored for years. The staff spoke more freely when she was around. The house felt less rigid. Even the atmosphere had been lighter. Not because of design, but because of her presence. And now it was gone. He stopped near the entrance hall, the exact place where she had once stood, holding her bag, arguing with him for the first time. That version of her felt distant now, not physically, but emotionally, like something he had pushed away without realizing its value. His assistant approached carefully. "Sir, should I prepare the usual schedule for tomorrow?" Adrian didn't. Respond immediately. Then quietly he said, cancel it. The assistant blinked. All of it? Yes. A pause. Then Adrian added something he had never said before in his entire career. I need time. That night he didn't sleep. Instead, he sat by the window, looking at the city lights. But this time, he wasn't calculating. He wasn't planning. He wasn't controlling anything. He was simply aware. Aware of the emptiness. Aware of the mistake. Aware of something far more dangerous than loss. Regret. And beneath that regret, something else began to form. Not strategy, not logic, not necessity. Something he had spent his entire life avoiding. A truth he could no longer deny. Elena didn't just walk out of his house. She walked out of the life he didn't realize he wanted until she was gone. The city looked the same, but for Elena, everything felt different now. She stood on the rooftop of a small building near the outskirts of town, staring at the skyline that once felt full of opportunity, and now felt like a maze she had somehow escaped and re-entered at the same time. Leaving the mansion should have felt like freedom. But freedom, she realized, didn't always feel like peace. Sometimes it felt like uncertainty. After walking away, Elena had managed to find temporary work, again small jobs, quick payments, enough to survive day by day. Nothing stable, nothing luxurious. But at least it was hers. Still, her thoughts kept drifting back to the silence of the mansion, back to the man who spoke in contracts, but looked like he was slowly learning how to feel. Back to Adrian Cole. She hated that she remembered him so clearly, hated even more that she didn't only remember the cold version of him, she remembered the quieter moments too. The tea left in her room, the way he noticed everything without saying it. The rare moments when his guard slipped just enough for something real to show through. And the worst part, she remembered the version of him that looked lonely. Not powerful. Not rich. Just human. Meanwhile, across the city, Adrian was no longer the same man who ruled through precision. He had stopped attending events, stopped answering unnecessary calls, stopped pretending everything was normal. For the first time in his life, he wasn't building anything. He was searching. Days turned into a quiet pursuit. Not of business. Not of reputation, but of one person, Elena Carter. When he finally found her location through one of his contacts, he didn't send staff. He didn't send messages. He came himself for the first time. Adrian Cole walked into the world without control as his shield. Elena was leaving her small workplace one evening when she saw him standing across the street still unmoving like he had been there longer than time itself. Her heart stopped, not out of fear, but out of recognition. You found me, she said quietly when he approached. I didn't stop looking, Adrian replied. A long silence followed, the kind of silence that once separated them, but now felt different, less like distance, more like history. You shouldn't be here, Elena said softly. I should have been here earlier, he answered. That honesty caught her off guard, because there was no calculation in his voice this time. No contract. No system. Just truth. Elena looked away first. I didn't leave because I wanted to punish you, she said. I left because I couldn't keep being something I'm not. I know, Adrian said. That simple response made her look back at him, and I was wrong. He added. The words were steady but difficult for him, not rehearsed. Not strategic. Real. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The city moved around them, cars, voices, distant noise, but between them, everything was still. I thought I needed control, Adrian said quietly. But what I needed was understanding. Elena's voice softened. And you think I can give you that? I think you already did, he replied. That hit differently, because it wasn't an offer. It wasn't a request. It was acknowledgement. Elena took a slow breath. I don't trust easily, she said. I know, Adrian replied again. A faint, almost painful smile touched her lips. You're not supposed to agree so easily. For the first time, something close to warmth appeared in his expression. I'm not trying to win, he said. I'm trying to be honest. A long pause. Then Adrian stepped slightly closer, but stopped at a respectful distance. No contract, he said. Elena studied him carefully. No arrangement. he continued. His voice lowered slightly. Just me. And you, if you want it. That was the moment everything changed. Because for the first time, he wasn't offering control, he was offering vulnerability, and Elena had never seen that version of him before. Her eyes softened, but uncertainty remained. You really think people can just change like that? She asked. Adrian didn't look away. I don't know, he admitted. But I know what losing you felt like. That silence between them deepened, not uncomfortable. Just real. Elena looked at him for a long moment. The man she had once seen as cold, the man she had argued with, the man she had almost hated, and the man she now couldn't fully deny had changed, finally. She spoke. I'm not saying yes, she said quietly. Adrian nodded. I understand. But I'm not saying no either. That was enough. Not resolution. Not perfection. But possibility. As the city lights shimmered behind them. Something new began, not a contract, not a deal, but a choice, one that neither of them fully understood, yet, but both of them were finally willing to make. Together. Or not at all.